Lonely Pine Bee Farm here. I think I found my new location for my videos, especially whenever I'm not down there in the bee yard or somewhere else. Right there, Lonely Pine Bee Farm. That's how it's got its name. It's the only pine tree on the property. Anyway, we're going to talk about the flow. And the flow is a word that we use as beekeepers, meaning nectar source, abundance of forage for the bees. And meaning that when we say the flow's on, means that there is an abundance amount of nectar coming from different sources, whether it's trees, flowers, plants, whatever it is, that the bees are out bringing in nectar, bringing it back to the hive, taking that nectar, drying it out, turning it into honey. That's what the flow means. So if you ever hear a beekeeper say, yeah, the flow's on or the flow's not on, that's what they're talking about. When the flow's not on, bees, there's very little nectar source out there for the bees. When the flow's on, there's a lot of it out there. Dearth is a term that we use as beekeepers, which is the right opposite of the flow. The dearth means that there is hardly nothing out there, and the bees are just not necessarily saying they're starving, but they're looking for anything and everything they can bring in. So, if you want to know how to tell if the flow is on or if a dearth is going on, what you can do is, and I can actually go down to the bee yard and show you, but we're not going to do that. I'm just going to explain it to you, and you can take my word for it, or you can try it, experiment yourself. When at the beginning of a flow or before the flow, coming out of winter, coming into spring, you can actually take a mason jar and drill you a couple of holes in the lid, 5 or 10 little small holes. I use a 32nd or a 16th drill bit. You can go up to an 8th. But the bigger you make your holes, the less holes you need to put in it. But take 1-to-1 sugar water, which means half sugar, half water. Stir it up real good, get it dissolved good. Go out there and find you 2 little pieces of wood, something that you can, when you turn your jar upside down, you can set it on top of that wood. That will allow the bees to get to the lid. When you do that, you create a vacuum in that jar, so the liquid won't just pour out the jar. The bees actually will come up to the holes, stick their tongues in there, and suck the sugar water out. So if you go out in your yard right now and you do that, and then within an hour or two you see a bunch of bees out there, the flow is not in full force. Right now we do have a small flow. You don't see a whole lot of bees out there feeding on the feeders, but there are a few. That pretty much tells me that it's not in full force. Like I said, this summer, if you want, anybody can do it. It's not that hard. Everybody, if you was just go search a yard, you would see a honeybee somewhere if you just look. Especially like early spring. Like really coming out of winter, when the dandelions and things like that are popping up in your yard, and you see the bees out there on it. That's the beginning, getting ready to start the flow in full force. How I caught my first swarm and how I found my first set of bees was, I done that, set a jar out, bees started coming to it. I caught a bee, done this, done that. I can make a video about it later if you want. And I ended up tracking the bees down, figured out where they was at. So, but yeah, just give it a try. Now, yeah, you're probably gonna get yellow jackets and wasps and bumblebees and probably some ants if you got ants in your yard. But if the flow is not on, if there's nothing for the bees to forage on, you'll have honeybees coming to it. There ain't no doubt. So that's one way of checking, is to just set you some sugar water out. They will let you know if the flow is on, and they'll let you know if the flow ain't on. So anyway, I hope that was helpful to you for people that have trouble knowing when the flow's on. Even experienced beekeepers. It's not like we can smell the nectar in the trees. We go based on what we see. I'm not experienced. I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years, so I'm not as good as some others. But there's no beekeeper that can sit here and say, yeah, the flow's on, I can smell it. You can't do it. They just pretty much been doing it long enough to know that the flow's on or it's not. But if you having trouble knowing, just do what I said. Take your jar of honey syrup, sugar syrup, drill some holes, turn it upside down. Bees will let you know. Anyway, Lonely Pine Bee Farm. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Be nice if you subscribe. Help me grow my page. You don't have to if you don't want to. But anyway, God bless, and we're out.